Okay.
City Council Bills, ad hoc MPO RFP committee meeting convenes into session Saturday morning, March 9th at 10:15 a.m. First check if there's a quorum. I determined there's a quorum. First time in business is welcome, and we welcome the members of the meeting and our esteemed city manager. Second item of business is review and approve the minutes of the February 16, 2019 meeting. I have reviewed the minutes. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Okay, any discussion on the minutes for any revisions? All in favor of approving the minutes as written? Okay, approved. Discussion, item number 3, discussion of possible action on library proposal and/or disposition of excess books. This is a continuation of the discussion that we had at our last MPO meeting. And Skip, you want to start this one?
Yeah, I'll start it. In the last minutes, we had a review of the library and our facilities by Ms.
I'm sorry, before we do that, we need a motion.
Motion. Okay, sorry.
Okay. Need your motion?
I move we recommend to the city council that the excess books in the library be disposed of in accordance with whatever manner the city manager finds best.
I'll second that motion. Okay, sorry, discussion.
Okay, I'm sorry. Ms. Sylvia, who reviewed our library, indicated that 80% of the books we have are out of date or not usable for real library purposes. Can you not hear me? Oh, sorry. During our last meeting, Ms. Sylvia indicated that 80% of the books we have on hand should be culled or not suitable for a library. She also pointed out that since we have the facility open only during working hours during the week, that limits availability for people who work because they're not here when the library would be available during working hours of the city hall. Lastly, she mentioned that the city of San Antonio has a pretty good library. We had suggested that we might have them come out and open a branch library here, although I don't think we really have space for that. So she thought our library prospects were pretty small. I have advertised on Nextdoor for people who have an interest in a library, or people who want to work in a library facility or promote our library activities, and I have had pretty much zero response from the public. Ms. Scott on the city council has indicated that she was interested in working in the library. However, after Ms. Sylvia's report, Ms. Scott's no longer returning my calls or responding to my texts. So I assume her interest is waning. So I think the point now is that we have these excess books here that are taking up a lot of space. Some of them may be usable for some purposes, but a large portion of them need to be discarded anyway because they're not usable, or the technical books well beyond 10 years of age that are obsolete. So I think the most reasonable thing for us to do is to get rid of them.
All right, thank you, Skip. Jack?
I agree. If there's little interest and the books are mostly old and out of date, we ought to just get rid of them. We don't need to be offering that space for something that's not going to be used. So I'm on board with that.
Bernard, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm on board with that. And also, that wallpaper thing that the San Antonio Library has, like a QR code or something you can get on your mobile device.
Yeah.
I think be a better alternative to the always putting books back and.
Yeah. What Mr. Schumacher is referring to is a wallpaper library that the city of San Antonio has put together, where they have book titles along with a little barcode type,
the QR code.
yeah, QR code types that you can read on your cell phone. And you can apparently click on that, and the book will be downloaded to your phone, as I understand it. And so you can get access to the materials that way. However, the San Antonio Library has a great online facility. You can borrow books online, and without going through that procedure, we have a place where we can put it up. I suggest perhaps in the entryway in front of dispatch, because we got a lot of wall space, and because it's available, people could ask dispatch to come in and look at the wall if they wanted to. What we do have to do is to have San Antonio Library System has to have an opportunity to replace that on whatever basis they usually do it, in order for it to be usable. We could look into it. I don't think it would be any cost, but it's something we could certainly look into. Separate question, seems to me.
You're talking, I assume that's a poster, essentially, that they would put on the wall?
I believe that it's some kind of an adhesive poster or adhesive wallpaper that they can put up and replace on a fairly easy basis. I have not seen it, I haven't used it, so it's something we'd have to talk to San Antonio Library about. Don't have any idea whether they even have an interest in it.
Right. Ryan, with that, would you mind following up on that, just reaching out to the San Antonio Library staff and seeing if they could provide one for the city?
Yes, sir. I know somebody works on the staff.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Okay. So, we have an agenda item here to work on the disposal of these books. I think that's the spirit of the item.
Right.
One point, Mr. Squire, like I was telling the councilman yesterday, in talking to Mark Schnall, that these books are considered public property. So at some point, if we were to, for instance, provide them, he mentioned like an assisted living, senior living, like Brookdale, for instance, if they want to donate the books, then that would be a gift as a public property that we could do from that standpoint. But he also wanted me to research if there's any documentation that we have to say how we came about to acquire the books, and if there was a process for what we were supposed to do with these books. If there's some type of document here.
What I was going to recommend here is, and you were a step ahead of me, so thank you for being talking about that, but I was going to recommend, I know Douglas, we got this very previous gentleman who passed away that the lion's share of books came from. But he's familiar with that. He may be familiar with any specific wishes. I just believe the thought process was back then was to allow the donation to go to the city. And I don't know if it's directly from the gentleman or what it was, how it was facilitated in these books here in that regard. But what I may suggest here is, could this be an item that goes to us as a council agenda item?
It will be on the council agenda this coming meeting.
It's Tuesday.
Okay.
And the other thing is that I would point out that we don't have to accept gifts or legacies. If somebody leaves us a bunch of stuff we don't want, for example, I don't know what it would be, a herd of goats, for example. We don't want a herd of goats, and so we could simply decline to receive the herd of goats.
We could have them out in the commons for maintenance.
Yeah, that's right, when you may keep the grass. Put them on the highways.
I'll have Rick corral them up every once in a while.
But anyway, we don't have to take it.
So we have agenda items. I think the action is going to be, I believe, more of a recommendation at this point.
Right.
To council to facilitate the disposal of these books.
Right.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, agenda item number 4, report and training received at the MPO CMAQ training. Myself and Mr. McCormick attended. I'll start it if we can follow up here. There were 2 sessions that were offered for the training. They did have some materials, which I do have. I do have some of the materials with me on it. It was on February 21st, I think, was the training. That's right. There was a 9:30 and 1:30 p.m. session. I attended the morning session. Councilman McCormick attended the afternoon session. This was a mandatory training that we had to take in order to be eligible for the CMAQ funds, which we'll get more into that on the next agenda. But it was a, short, fairly simple training, great opportunities coming in for utilizing some of these funds, for, I guess, reduction of emissions, which is what the goal is, since we are now in a non-attainment state in this area. And so the whole push is to do that. And we do have some projects that would qualify. And again, that's a question we need to discuss here in a second. But the training was I guess, I would say informative. We meet the requirements. We have the staff that we do meet. We have the staff along with some contractors that we could utilize to do the requirements you have to follow. That would make us eligible for this. So, to get into gory details on it, I don't know what else to say on that, but Skip,
Okay.
follow up.
I thought the presentation was slightly disorganized, but the information was useful. One of the most important points that was raised was that the project value has to be at least $1 million. And that has the effect of cutting out small cities and small projects that might otherwise benefit from the largesse of the Volkswagen payoff for their bad actions in connection with air quality. So they have a scoring system for the CMAQ projects. CMAQ is congestion mitigation and air quality. Both congestion mitigation and air quality were substantial portions of the scoring of the projects that were to be considered. Other things that were considered were whether or not the project was a joint project, which counted for as many as 10% of 100 points in the scoring process. So if you had a joint project, you picked up an additional 10% points. Looking at it, our two projects probably are not $1 million, either one of them. Either in the turn lanes from West Avenue northbound on the 410 east, or from Jackson Keller northwestbound out to West Avenue northbound. Probably those are each less than $100,000. So the only way to put those together would be to put them together in one project and try to make them work. I discussed that with San Antonio. I guess I'm getting on beyond myself here, but in any case, those are items that were considered. Mr. David Melican, who is the director in Austin for Textile, gave a little presentation in which he mentioned, I believe it was Presidio or Porfirio, one of the small counties with small population and a very small county seat of around 5,000 people, 7,500 people in the whole county. He made the point that TxDOT was there for the purpose of making sure that you could comply with all the stuff that you're supposed to be able to do. And that because this town was such a small town, TxDOT essentially managed the project for him, and he suggested that that was available to the rest of us as well if such a circumstance happened to arise. The circumstances are that the city, as a local government, LG manager of a project, has a long list of responsibilities, including the assurance that all the contractors comply with such things as the Disadvantaged Business Entities Act and other things of that sort. And we have essentially 3 designated points of contact. One for the city, one, I forget what the middle one was, and the bottom one was the guy who was actually doing the work. And had to be somebody on a day-to-day basis. Furthermore, the local government representative had to have attended a 12-hour course and passed an examination on the material. And they do it 500 times a year, but it's all over the state. So, anyway, that's one of the sort of stumbling blocks you have to get past in order to be able to play a game. Is you have to have studied the rules and all of that and pass an exam on it. So I talked to Mark Mosley, who is the San Antonio area TxDOT rep. I talked to David Milliken, who is the guy who gave the presentation. And I have to say that the response to my inquiry about whether we could qualify for assistance from TxDOT to do this was substantially unenthusiastic.
Beautiful understatement.
And so I went and talked to Christina De La Cruz at San Antonio TCI, and then I talked to Bianca Thorpe at San Antonio TCI. And Christina was pretty helpful. Bianca initially didn't seem to be very receptive to doing any kind of a joint project. Then she talked to Art Reinhardt, who was the acting director of TCI at COSA, and came back with the idea that maybe we could get something together for the next time around. Well, in the meantime, it occurred to me, that if we're going to put these two projects together, we would have to put both projects in one. Well, San Antonio wasn't amenable to that because they don't own any of the intersection at West and 410. They own a substantial part of the right of way on Jackson Keller to west, but not West and 410. So they wouldn't be willing to do that as lead. We would put them in charge of the project, pay them some kind of a surcharge for doing the management work and that sort of thing. But they weren't really, agreeable to that. They were agreeable to putting this in a joint project and then putting it into a later application, which was reasonable. The other alternative would be to combine the two projects, and according to Mr. Squire, he thinks we can contract out this management stuff that the city would have to be responsible for. And if we could do that, then we could put both projects in one package, send them in as $1 million total project, and contract out the management. And the city of San Antonio would be paying us for some of the management, and paying their share of the street work. Whether we can get that done is a whole other question, because San Antonio has a whole list of stumbling blocks that they like to put out. They want to do their own survey, they want to do their own analysis of the work. They have to confirm the availability of the right of way and so forth. And so it seems to me very likely that we'd be almost completely out of court trying to get it done for this application. But we've made an initial step towards being able to work with San Antonio and get something done in the future, which we may not be able to get it done now, but we've got a start towards being able to work with San Antonio in the future and get something done really that will do us some good.
I think that's a huge step, thank you.
Yeah.
If I may, and we've kind of touched on a couple other agenda items.
Yeah, I know.
And they all kind of meld together anyway, which is fine, but to close out this agenda item, I think one of the things that we need to consider doing is exactly what you're saying. We need to get out there more, and that's what this committee's actually been doing with the training that we've been out there, and being with TxDOT, going to these items, but you know, anything we can do, and Ryan, anything that can be done to help our city be more involved with the surrounding city, county, state, or local governments. I think we need to continue to push that.
Yeah.
If we're not developing those relationships, we'll
with-
stay in the same hole that we're in.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Without those relationships, we need to leverage, partner, whichever way we need to do, especially with our bordering cities, which is San Antonio. As the councilman said, I sent an email to everyone in regards to myself speaking to Bianca, and COSA's got to do their due diligence at the intersection, and they're going to provide some examples of an agreement how we could partner on a future project, specifically that intersection. And like I said, I had contacted the chief of staff for District 1 for Councilman Trevino, and ideally, as I told the councilman, it's good to put it on the radar of the councilman in that district on his forefront to push with staff.
Thank you. Okay, so we've completed this agenda item number 4. We'll move on to agenda number 5. Report on the CMQ project meeting with TxDOT and MPO personnel. Councilman McCormick,
That's when you know.
myself, and Brian had an opportunity to talk with Dale
Pica.
of TxDOT. And there were some follow-on items associated with that. I'd like to hear, if it's okay, I'd like to hear, well, the project, I guess let's talk about what the meeting was for, and then I'd like to hear the following items that you were trying to follow up on that, if that's okay. We saw some of the emails, obviously, too. So do you want me to go ahead and kind of share what the meeting was about? So the initial, Mr. Pickup? Okay, he came down, he's with TxDOT, he came down to look at the project of West Avenue 410, which we have on the drawing here, of adding making that lane go all the way through to where it mitigates some of the congestion on that corner. We also, at that point, also talked about bringing San Antonio in and doing the Jackson Keller West Avenue right turn lane. Some of the comments that he had, because there's a threshold you have to get, which Councilman McCormick mentioned, that project with TxDOT alone, if we don't bring San Antonio in, even though there's some utility work that needs to be done, maybe some easements that need to be purchased.
And land acquisition.
Say again, please?
And
Possible acquisition.
possibly land acquisition.
Right. His comment to us was that he didn't believe that it would meet the threshold of making the $1 million project, which unfortunately wouldn't allow us to qualify. So in talking to San Antonio, and Councilman McCormick was discussing about combining this project together, and it sounds like San Antonio is just going to be relatively slow to move on this based on the response to the email that they sent. But what I'd like to hear, and one thing to say is he recognized the problem that this intersection is, and TxDOT is looking to want to resolve this problem. They want to be proactive on this, and so that was a good thing. It was a good meeting. So I'd like to hear what the follow-up is, and Brian, can you take this at this point?
Sure, Mr. Squire. I mean, again, I'm just restating, as a course of speaking with Bianca, we kind of set out sort of those next steps. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, we have to establish some type of agreement that spells out the roles and responsibilities of the entities and how the funding partnership would work and distribution. Mm-hmm. They would have to go through a process of like she said, a traffic data modeling to find out, to make sure those assumptions meet what specifically they're looking for during their modeling. They'll also look at the survey of the intersection. They do some right-of-way and then figure out if that's kind of a high priority intersection to reduce congestion. As Mr. Pica said, he was meeting with Mr. Reinhardt and regarding other projects, was going to brief him on it, and was waiting for Dale to get back with me to see how receptive Mr. Reinhardt was.
Did he get back with you?
Not yet.
So, not yet, okay.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I would ask that if you could maybe just send him a follow-up email.
Sure.
I'd like to hear what
Absolutely.
Mark had to say.
But again, I guess it seemed pretty positive that they would work with us now from this point, especially on this project.
Okay. Follow up on that. Councilman Coleman.
I thought the meeting went pretty well. I think what we probably should consider doing is to designate a point of contact who is younger than me, and I don't say that with prejudice, but I say it for a reason. And one is that I noticed in that meeting, Mr. Picha, and I noticed other people do it, and this is not something that is a surprise to me, but people tend to relegate people in my age group kind of to the side. Mr. Pica's attention was focused on Mr. Rackley and Mr. Squire, and he wouldn't even look at me until after I commented that I had spoken to Jonathan Bean about something. And that's not anything bad about Mr. Picha. That's just a fact of life, that people in the young and very active age groups are more inclined to look at other people in the young and very active age groups than they are to somebody at my age group. That's not anything bad about them or anything, it's just a fact of life. So I think we're better off with somebody who is, one, an engineer, two, younger, like you, for example.
Thanks for volunteering.
to be our primary point of contact. Not that I can't contribute, I think I can, but I don't think I get the attention that Mr. Squire would get. That's just, I think, a fact of life. So I think we need somebody perhaps more diplomatic than I am, which may be a benefit, and somebody who gets a little bit more attention. So, but I do think we need somebody in that category who can relate to the engineers and people at TCI and people at TxDOT and so forth.
Just as a follow-up, in that email, as I had mentioned, I sent Bianca the renderings here. And then I'm also having our engineers put together probable costs, a full probable cost of both intersections for us, so we have that moving forward as well.
Okay, thank you. I want to follow on that, we appreciate that. Okay, thank you, Skip. Jen, Bernard, any thoughts on the meeting, any things questions that may have?
Well, I think that's great. Congratulations to you all for working on that and finally getting some response from the city and maybe help out. What a miracle. But, and the question, of course, floating through my mind as you guys are describing these things is, do you think we might be able to make some progress on getting them to help us with the drainage side of things, which is nothing to do with this intersection? But are any of these folks that you're talking to those that might be able to initiate or participate in some side of partnership with drainage?
Yeah, I mean, the TCI encompasses the traffic, public works, stormwater. Kind of used to be the public works, but now TCI is housed under one component, one department there. And right now they're actually looking for a director, so they have an interim from that standpoint. So, but again, I've had discussions with the assistant director of stormwater before and regarding our projects, and you know, now that we have this, I'm going to provide it to him as well from that standpoint. But he's real receptive. Like I said, attending those BRWN meetings is helpful as well. So, and if anybody wants to attend those meetings, I usually attend those. It's every other month on Mondays for about 2 or 3 hours. And I think the next one's in April.
I think I would like to attend those with you.
Okay, sounds good.
And TxDOT meetings are the last Monday and the first Friday of months. And their agendas generally are posted online, and minutes are posted online and so forth. They tend to be pretty voluminous, to the hundreds of pages, literally. Wow. And so finding stuff in there is a little difficult. They have an abbreviated agenda that just lists the topics, and then they have attachments that tend to run between 250 and 400 pages.
A bunch of ED people talking about a lot of ED
No
stuff.
stone left unturned.
And I have to say, a lot of it's eyewash.
Okay, Councilman Carter, certainly appreciate that. I think we discussed the report. The only thing I would, as one of the items in the meeting that did come up was also trying to rope in as best as we could Bear County. Also, I think Councilman Trevino was trying to reach out to him also, if I recall, of City of San Antonio. I brushed on that. Do you mind, was there anything you can share with us on both of those? Right?
No, specifically, I just wanted to make sure it's on the radar for the councilman in District 1, because that is the border for District 1.
Right.
And like I said, I contacted the chief of staff and let him know that this is a project we've posed in front of staff, the TCI staff, from that standpoint.
Did he respond?
What's that?
Was there a response?
He just said he'd get back. So,
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's,
So not on his radar at this point?
no, not officially, but
Okay. So it'll be a friendly
I will
reminder then.
get confirmation. So
Wonderful. What about Bear County?
Bear County, I will be passing it on to the commissioner in this precinct.
Let Kevin know this.
I will.
Thank you. Okay, anything else on agenda item number 5? All right, moving on, agenda item number 6, discussion of possible action on CMAQ projects. Councilman McCormick and myself, we stated that the threshold is $1 million to these projects. These projects are, in my opinion, a no-brainer.
Sorry, Mr. Square, just on the follow-up, as soon as I have these conversations or hear back from like Mr. Pica and the chief of staff, those kind of things, get confirmation, I'll email it out to everybody, so everybody has the same information.
Everybody on the committee, correct?
Everybody on the committee.
Okay, good, thank you. Again, there's $1 million threshold. with San Antonio methodically looking at this process, I do believe that this is something that is not going to occur beyond the pretty well said it. And as soon as that follow-up, there was no budging at that point. Unfortunately, I don't think these projects are going to move forward with the CMAQ dollars that are available, but it's going to be more of a year, 2 years down the road, maybe the next call, the MPO call, or other funds that come available, which I'm not aware of at this point.
She did mention again in that email that when I talked to her about it was the TIP and the TIP and the TAP. So there will be other call for projects to where there's a possibility of a joint partnership. So at least if they start looking on their side and have the data and probable costs, then it's quicker to,
Jump into it.
put the application together and get it going.
But those transportation improvement projects that she's referring to, that's going to be 2 years down the road for that call, if I
She didn't mention it like it was that far away. There would be others here sooner than later.
We don't
That's-
know how long it
Yeah.
will take to get one. They have several other programs, like the Transportation Improvement Program and so forth. They come up with money from time to time. And some of it kind of depends on how effective John Cornyn and the boys are in getting us money from the feds. And we may not always know when that's going to occur, and Lord knows what Mr. Trump's line will do with it when he gets it, but.
Right.
So there are lots of variables.
So the question there then.
I think, Mr. Squire, that the idea is to have the project ready to go, like I call shovel ready. So like any other project that's been vetted, designed, and cost, so you're ready to apply for funds, whether they're federal or state, that they're ready to go. So if we can find some matching or partnership with San Antonio, we're ready to go.
Well, so as we're discussing this, I think the path forward is moving forward with the MOUs, as Mr. McCormick suggested, and also put an MOU together, I guess.
Yeah, they're going to give it's typically it's, interlocal, but she's going to provide me if they've had one with another entity, possibly in the same manner. And that way we have a document I can get in front of Mr. Schnall.
Okay. Let me step back a second. This was discussion of possible action on CMAQ projects. I apologize, I do believe I need a motion and a second on this item.
Okay, I move we put them on the agenda for the coming council meeting. And I'll address why I believe that afterwards, but I make a motion that we include the CMAQ projects as agenda items for consideration by the council in the coming meeting.
Okay. And I'll say, go ahead, Bernard, second to that.
I didn't raise my hand. That was just a stretch. Sorry. To me. I went like this, not up, like this.
Okay. Skip, and I think I know where you're going. If you want to go ahead and comment,
Okay.
please.
I have, as a matter of fact, already put them on the agenda for the coming meeting. But we had talked about this previously, and the purpose of putting them on the agenda for the coming meeting is not to have us make a decision and pass something. It's to educate the council as to what's possible. We know that we're probably not going to get them in this meeting. We're probably not going to get them in the CMAQ deadline by April 1st because the number of items that have to be completed on our side is pretty large, and the ones on the San Antonio side seem pretty much insurmountable in the time we have available to do it. So the idea is to educate the council and the public as to what's possible and to be prepared to proceed more rapidly when we do come to a point where we can get something actually done.
And I think you might want to add in there, if that's okay, Skip, is if we were just going to partner with TxDOT, this could have been possible to move forward on, but adding the complication of the items that San Antonio wants to plan to it. The intersection probably hasn't been looked at as well as the West Avenue 410 intersection has been looked at with TxDOT. Like you said, it's something that's just too much to take on at this point.
Yeah.
So if it was a $500,000 threshold, I think we could move forward.
Yeah.
At this point, I really do. And we'd be pushing the TxDOT involved. I think they would gladly do it too.
Well, they might do it. I don't know how glad they'd be because my impression is that they had a whole bunch of brothers on the other side of that question.
Right. On the positive side.
Yeah.
So they recognize the issues with that intersection.
Yeah.
Clearly I would just ask that be brought up, and there's a hill we can't get over at this point. But this is a wonderful learning experience for us to, I would reach out, and if it's possible to authorize the MOU, authorize the interlocals during the council meeting. That may not be a bad idea to get that going at least.
Yeah, I think that's something we can do, because we don't have to put any money in it, for one thing, and the other is that it's something we have to have if we're gonna get anywhere downstream.
Okay, Skip, thank you. On the agenda item, let's get this.
Councilman, for Tuesday night, did you want I don't know if you want Mr. Squire there to talk about sort of the process?
I was gonna mention that to Mr. Squire. I think I'm gonna talk out, and if you'd like to be there, the council may have questions for you as chair. And I think I think that's reasonable and fair. If you want to be there, that's fine. If you don't want to be there, I think that's up to you too.
That is this next Tuesday. Correct?
Next Tuesday.
Yeah, I'll be available, sure.
Okay.
The agenda item that Councilman Clark is proposing, I think is very appropriate. Is there any other discussion on this particular item? Okay, all in favor? All right, thank you.
Keeping up the tradition of unanimous votes, I think is likely.
Miraculous.
We're an oddity in this community. Good one, though. Okay, agenda item number 7, discussion and possible action on a proposed streets and drainage committee. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All right, thank you. Skip.
I'll point out that we discussed this and actually voted on the Streets and Drainage Committee previously. And it's on the agenda for this coming meeting. I wanted to give the committee another opportunity to take a look at it. I have asked for the council to appoint a Streets and Drainage Committee consisting of at least 5 persons, and including specifically Douglas Gregory and Jack Joyce, because of reasons we discussed previously. Douglas has been on it for 14 years. He at least knows the background. Jack has taken an interest in the drainage projects that we have, and has taken the grant writing course, and is looking into the plan for our drainage relief and the possibility of grants from the U.S. Army and other people. So I'm asking for the committee to tell me if they've had any second thoughts about it, if they want to add something to what I've already put in the agenda for the coming meeting.
Right.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I think we need a committee. I mean, just so there's another place they can go instead of just at the council meeting, discussing all these issues.
What I put in for the purpose of the committee is to prioritize projects in consideration of the drainage plan, the capital improvements plan, and the long-range plan, to come up with those, and in consideration of engineering recommendations as well, to come up with those priorities that they feel will best satisfy our ability to pay for them and the needs of the citizens.
On the members of the committee, do you have a comment, thought process for the other, in this case, it's a 5-member committee.
Yeah.
You have an idea for 2 members at this point.
Yeah.
On the other 3 members, is there any thoughts on that?
I haven't looked at that. I figured that, first of all, being presumptive enough to suggest the appointment of 2 of those members is a pretty fair assumption, and the council, I think it's up to the council to pick people if they think are going to do a decent job and make a contribution. And I have asked that the entire council make the appointments rather than any individual member of the council. But no, I haven't really thought much about it. I guess if I had my brothers, I wouldn't mind having, is it Wayne Carter, the guy, the Army Corps of Engineers guy, if he were available and were willing. But I've talked to him once or twice. I know his wife died recently. He's been in serious grieving since that's happened, and is not really willing to go much outside to do anything that obligates his time. So I don't know whether he's willing to participate or able to or not. I don't know enough of the people in the community to be able to identify the folks. I'm sure there are people that are really well qualified whom I don't know.
One thing I would like to have you bring up and ask, if this committee's agreement, is served as the chair of the committee also. And so one of the things we get sidelined on is when you're not technical in nature, which these committees really want to stay relatively technical as you're hashing through this stuff. But I would say, people need to have, that are appointed, to not make it unfortunately a political appointment, but I think it should be notated these are more, people that have familiarity with the subject of streets and drainage. Or some training in that.
I have concerns about that. I really don't know whether it's possible to get a non-political appointment from the council at large. But
Yeah, I know.
The thing, Mr. Squire, is, with not only the drainage side here for the CIP, but the streets already completed. You have your schedule of projects and priorities already laid out. And typically, when you look at your capital improvements plan on both sides of total infrastructure, streets, drainage, is the time you prioritize each year when you're putting the budget together to find out what funds you have and what are, that's when you kind of reshift. Ideally, this document being a comprehensive document for streets and drainage takes out the politics.
It does to a degree.
But I would say you need someone also with the help, because eventually council is going to have to find another conduit for funding.
Right.
So we might need to have someone on there who has got some kind of financial background that can help look at long-term borrowing.
I think that's Douglas, of course.
Well, yes,
He's been
but-
treasurer of the city since a long time ago.
But I'm just saying, having someone, obviously, is, Councilman Gregory, but that's going to be a part of looking at this down the road, is how we find the dollars to get these projects done.
Right. Which in that case, you need somebody that has some knowledge that knows about municipal funding. And so that would be more of an expert in that area. And I'm not saying a subject matter expert at this point, even though I'm partial to that. But you need people that have.
So what you're saying is you're nominating yourself for the public
I'm
funds?
not myself. Absolutely not.
Sure you
No,
don't.
I agree with John, though. I think there needs to be at least some technical expertise, and perhaps we can make that a suggestion,
Yeah.
just a suggestion to council. Certainly fundraising expertise is imperative, but I think technical expertise too, because sometimes I think citizens who are not professional in a particular discipline can say, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about, or something like that, whereas if we have a technical guy, an engineer there, they say, no, this is exactly the way it is. We really shouldn't undo this. I think it will help prevent undoing of already some good stuff that has been done.
Well, if you look at it like the street side that's completed, there's only a few million over the next 5 years to address the street side. So somewhere there's that yield of 20-some million to find. And so here, you're a couple million, so you're yielding now about 15 or 16 million to find the dollars for the drainage side. But for instance, in the schedule here, in years 1 and 2, it's already plugged in the projects that were approved by council in February. And so that gets the ball rolling. And then as you can see, year 6, as it becomes a continual rolling plan, takes into account those projects, which was the balance of the 12.
Can I throw a crazy idea out here? I'm using her just as an example, and so I'm not trying to make anything but like Jeannie, for example. She has the expertise. She understands.
Who's that?
A red Jeannie guy with the MPO. Okay, who came here and visited us. She brings some skill set to the table that could dovetail into this type of committee. And I'm not saying I'm recommending her. I'm using this as an example. It's the type of person that you may be looking for that can help, if they're willing.
What's her qualifications technically? Is she an engineer or just?
I don't believe so, but I've never
She's an
asked you.
administrator.
Oh, here you go. There you go. Deputy Director of the Allen Area MPO. And so, thank you.
Yeah.
So, but I want to use that as an example of the type of people we may be looking for that can bring kind of a complete package. MPO is all about improvement, infrastructure, connectivity, which in this case, streets and drainage, there's some similar thought process there.
I would suggest that if we can come up with a couple of names, this is a good place for those of us on the committee who are not going to be wind up sitting on times to get up with citizens and say, suggest thus and so person for the committee, for the Streets and Drainage Committee. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know the other people in the community who might be technically qualified or whether they even have an interest, but you may, you know some other engineers. You know, if you don't want to be on this committee yourself, do you know other?
Well, I don't think I could be on the committee.
David Gilmore is a possibility. He actually used to be the city engineer.
Yeah, oh, he'd be an excellent one, absolutely.
David Gilmore, do you know him? You want to talk to him?
I can talk to him, I don't have his number. Well, I'll probably do somewhere.
I think so.
Okay, I might have it, John, because I know I've talked to him before. But let me see if I have it.
So let me step back for a second here, just I'm going to be.
So you need one more.
Yeah, I mean, I would gladly serve on a committee like that, but only if it's appropriate, if that makes any sense.
Well, it's appropriate as far as I'm concerned. I don't really care who it is, as long as we get the job done, you know? And
Absolutely.
if you think you want to be on a committee and think you can do whatever needs to be done, then put yourself up.
With good help.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I just wanted to comment on, because I mean, streets are, that's my passion, obviously.
And this is something that you might talk to Gregory about. But there are limitations on how many people I can talk to about it. But if you're going to be on, if I'm recommending you to be on the committee, you know somebody you think would be good to work with, I think it's perfectly reasonable to contact people and suggest, hey, look, I see that this is an issue. I've been put up on this committee, and I'd like to suggest a couple of names to people that I've talked to who might think would do a really good job, and they have qualifications.
Okay, sure.
It's up to you guys what you think about that.
No, that's perfectly reasonable.
The reason why I say that, Mr. Squire, is, and when you talk about total magnitude now, you know, between both streets and all total infrastructure needs, the magnitude now sits at $42 million. So, you know, as I gave council sort of a forecast of funds over the next 5 years, it's roughly $5 million. That's not plugging in our new digital billboard dollars that were approved. So I'll be doing that hopefully before Tuesday to add that scope in.
Another
But,
$500,000 over 5 years?
I'll break down the numbers, but it's 80%. So yeah, it's pretty close to that.
Pretty close to
Yeah.
that, 400,000.
Based on the 25-year schedule, the new digital billboard plan was approved. I'm going to plug those dollars in just to show, because every 5 years and then every year it's going to change with the 2%. That's the way we negotiated. Sorry. Anyways, sorry. I'll plug in those numbers for the first 5 years, and then council will have that Tuesday so they can see. But you look at it, we'll be closer to over 5.5, 6 million now with that. Just in 5 years, so now you're talking that deficit is 34 million or 35 million, somewhere around there. So that's kind of a big piece that the committee would help look at, is not only where these projects, since they are scheduled already based on funding, how they might be rescheduled, because they are prioritized, but it comes down to funding. And, if you look at both the streets and the drainage now in this plan, the engineers say, this is the most critical and prioritized project to get done now. And again, in the street side, it's always good to try to do your full depth work in the first couple of years so you can come back in year 5 or 6 and do the seal coat. So you maintain the integrity. The thing is, in there, it's about $10 million worth of work for full depth.
I think also as far as reconstituting the street drainage committee, it needs to be scoped pretty tightly too, I would think. So,
Coach,
yeah, what they're going to be looking at, what they're not going to be looking at, because part of that.
streets and drainage.
Right.
What I put in my agenda, what would probably show up on the attached ordinance or resolution, whichever it is,
Okay.
is that the streets and drainage committee is designated to prioritize the work that needs to be done in consideration of engineering recommendations, capital improvements plan, the streets and drainage plans, and what was the last one?
Financials
Funding.
parts, the grants. You mentioned the grant
Well,
possibility.
that's something that Jack and whomever on the committee could be looking for funding, but we might want to put that in there.
Probably so. That's part of the task, probably.
Yeah, I'll add that as an addition.
May consider if you're gonna look at the maintenance tasks also, whether or not that's gonna be part of it. Maintenance stuff, that's a huge component of street and drainage.
Well,
And,
maintenance is, I think, part of the streets and drainage program, so I don't know. I'll see if I need to put that in.
Okay.
But yeah, I can amend that.
Thank you. Okay, we got a lot of good discussion on the proposed streets and drainage committee. Is there any other thing you want to make on that? Okay, all in favor? All right, thank you. Another unanimous one. Okay, and agenda item number 8, citizen and commission identification, new items for discussion at the meeting. I'll open this up for Art. Anything they want to identify for discussion that we should be considering?
No, not at this time.
I don't have any items that come to my mind for the next meeting as of yet. Jack, any thoughts?
I have no other ideas myself.
Okay.
On that topic.
On that topic, yes. See it.
And then go back real quick to item 6. Remember who moved on that? Who made the motion? Was that me or somebody else? Item 6.
I think that was me.
CMAQ.
That was
Yeah, I think you,
myself, and
and is it Bernard or you seconded?
Okay.
One of the two.
I think it was me and Houston.
Okay. I do have one item to bring up, and that is, I had on the agenda, and I guess it didn't, somewhere or another didn't make it to the paper. We have to consider what we're going to do with this committee. The committee was set for consideration for dissolution or retasking in May, which means we have a little time to come up with what we should do is consider whether we think that the committee should be continued in some form, and if it's continued in some form, how we should suggest that it be tasked for future jobs. My own thought is that I would be inclined to say that the committee has served useful purposes. We've got a lot of shit done that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And so I think that's good. I guess I shouldn't have.
That's okay.
Anyway, you know what I'm getting at. I've seen some stuff and we passed around the Texas A&M University report dated 2006, prepared by their master's program in urban planning. And it's about 206 pages. If you haven't looked through it yet, there are a whole number of possible projects. And in the second half of the report, every 3 or 4 pages is a separate project. And I think there are a lot of things here that we could look at and suggest or maybe improve on that have been started and not quite finished or not having been done in a fully baked sort of way.
I agree, Steve. There were a lot of ideas that came out of that report, because it's pretty dated now, obviously, but so the demographic information and that sort of stuff is completely outdated. But in terms of the ideas that came out of it, one of the ideas was like a downtown Castle Hills for the creation of that, and maybe adjusting some of the zoning in one area that they had in mind to help accomplish that. I thought that was a very worthy idea, and perhaps this kind of committee would be the committee to take up that kind of study rather than just, it's another report on the shelf as it is now, which is what Councilman Ford at the time was worried about. But anyway, I think that maybe that's a great thought, and maybe continuing to come up with more ideas for development in Castle Hills. The idea of the business partnership that we talked about in the last few meetings. Perhaps find some folks that are really interested in that and help promote business. it sounded like some of the ladies in the women's club are already doing that, which is wonderful. But perhaps we could do it in a way that's more beneficial to the business folks themselves, more attractive to them for that reason. But that would be a reasonable thing for, I think, a committee like this to think of.
The problem that the council has is that there's limited time available. Most of these folks are employed full-time, working
Yeah.
full-time,
Yeah.
and they don't have the time available to focus on a specific project and do a lot of footwork to come up with something usable. And this committee seems to me has been effective in doing things of that sort that otherwise wouldn't have happened. So I'm thinking that down the way, we're going to have to make a recommendation as to what to do with ourselves. And that looks like something that might be useful to do. I think we should consider it further, and I think do that.
I think
in the meantime.
I think I'm sorry.
Yeah, Steve, I think, I just think that I'm in agreement, it should be part of the agenda of the next meeting, that we discuss this item and try to make that determination. If we decide to go ahead, we could use the report, the text and report as our guide to start, as one of those projects, and bring on more as we see more become relevant. Or dissolution and formation of another committee if indeed council would like that.
I think I'd be inclined to call it just the projects committee next time rather than take out.
Yeah, because it seems reasonable, and to me, I think that if council goes along with the idea of reconstituting the streets and drainage committee, that the task that we can primarily focus on is sort of morph into those folks, right, whoever they are. And so there would be a need for us to have something to do.
I would think you would incorporate some type of economic development, because when you're talking about the business community, we're talking about improving our parks and quality of life, there's the economic development aspect. So I would kind of tie in, this is covered transportation and economic development and planning. It's kind of all had a correlation. So.
Very true. Very true. Skip is very appropriate idea.
I just work here, Bernard.
And even a little more so we do have a potential meeting coming up here in a couple of weeks. Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's the 28th, we've already picked a date.
Right, so we could go over that item at that point in time.
Hey, Bernard, remember I sent you that picture?
Okay, any other discussion for agenda item number 8?
No, I know.
All right, let's go to old business.
Next 20 grand.
Agenda item number 1, work session on previous project concepts, including congestion, drainage, and walkability. I do believe that, first of all, is there anything new to bring up on that?
Well, I'd just like to let you guys know that I've been continuing to work through some of those websites to find grant opportunities for us, and it's tough because so much of it is for research, for community kind of stuff, for educational things. The infrastructure things is hard to come by, but there is something that might potentially be able to help us that I stumbled across, something that promulgated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources Conservation Service. They have a program that's called Watershed and Flood Prevention Operations Program. And it appears that we might fit into their criteria. The only potential bugaboo is that if there is an agricultural component, we might struggle with that. But to me, at this point, that's not determined because
Even if we still have those goats?
Yeah, that's right. Well, that might do it for us. But I found information on that grant program in 2 sources. One source suggests that there is an agricultural need as a component. The other doesn't mention it. So I emailed the fellow who's in charge of the program, so hopefully before too long we'll have some information on that. So that's one possibility. The other thing I wanted to ask Ryan about is that does Castle Hills, Ryan, participate in the National Flood Insurance Program?
No, I'm not aware, sir. I'd have to
Okay.
look into that, but
It's probably mostly coastal areas.
I would think so, yes.
Yeah, because there's a lot of FEMA money for this kind of thing, for drainage and all that sort of stuff. Flood prevention, flood protection, that sort of thing, but it seems like being part of that flood program, which we're not, would be part of it, so, okay.
Yeah, I know one of the, I'm not saying it's wrong, but one of them is you have to be in one of the flood plains. When you reach FEMA maps.
FEMA maps, I was gonna say that when they redraw the FEMA maps, it puts you in that category, or it doesn't put you in that
I
category.
think we probably have some areas in our city that are in floodplains. I've looked at the FEMA map for my area, but not labeled. And so I'm sure they've been rewritten perhaps once since the last time I looked at them.
I know they redid them after Katrina, but have they redone them recently, John?
It's been a couple of years. since
But they did a couple of years ago.
Right, but they
What would you
usually,
look at?
majority of the floodplains are in the basins, the river basins, and unfortunately, some of us that we are experiencing in the community aren't. And so the streets. and
Maybe they are.
Yeah, maybe they are, exactly. I think they're accounting for that at this point.
I'd be real surprised if Dane Park is not in a floodplain.
That part of me, that, yeah,
Almost
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it floods 2 or 3 times a year.
Right, right. That's almost Creek, that's part of the, part of the Almost Creek Basin, I'm guessing, so, or the feeder to it. So, but that's the thing is, but you're not impacted, the homes are not impacted by that flooding, that impacted part. So it's, I guess that's something we just need to.
I mean, I'll just keep hammering away, I'll just keep looking at things. The Corps of Engineers is tough enough to crack, but I'll keep trying. There's 8 billion agencies within the Corps of Engineers. None of them says drainage.
I wonder if that program, it lends aid to living on the coast where you have to elevate your structure for insurance purposes. I don't know.
Again,
The
Wayne
FEMA
Carter,
programs
Yeah.
probably do.
So,
Yeah, got a great resource right there.
Wayne Carter would be an ideal resource to tap that if he's willing to be involved in anything, even on a peripheral basis. I mean, you just ask him a question or two, you probably get some really worthwhile answers.
do you want me to have a call into him? So I'm hoping to meet with him Monday on a
Yeah,
request.
I don't
He
want
sent me a
to
request on
emotions
something
straight.
to look into, a letter. So I'm looking into it, but I told him that,
Okay.
or I was going to contact him and tell him that myself and Mr. Harada will be out to look at his request from that standpoint.
Great, that might be perfect
A
opportunity.
good opportunity to touch base with him.
Yeah, great.
Jack, thank you.
I'll let him know that Mr. Squire is recommending his appointment. So,
That sounds good. Any other items on agenda item number 1? Any discussion agenda number 1? All right, thank you. Item 2, members' opportunity to make announcements. Skip, we'll start with you.
Have any announcements at the moment?
Okay, Jack?
Nor do I.
Okay. Me neither. All right, thank you, that was easy. Okay, agenda 3, announce the date and time of the next meeting. At the previous meeting, we did already set the date and time. It's going to be our first evening meeting, and that date is February the 28th, March the 28th at 6:30 p.m. And I believe here in council chambers, if I recall, is that, did you make that decision?
I got a note from Kip telling me that I should have confirmed somehow to book this place ahead of time. And I just need to know that we're going to be booked for the 28th.
Yes, sir. And just so you know, well, I mean, you know that we're doing all online scheduling now for the chambers, the community room. We actually had our IT come in yesterday to fix the naming. So if you want to reserve it, it'll come in like CH City Secretary. So at this point, everything is going to be online for utilization of reserving this room any day, and as well as the community room.
So do we need
So
to
it's
go
all on the
online
calendar.
and schedule a room then? or-
I will pass it on to Kit to
It's next
Lock
I
it
don't
in.
mind doing it.
No,
I
no.
just need to know what needs to be done.
because before there was some issues where it was just on a calendar and
Who had the calendar?
who had the calendar, and it was done in pencil. And so we've got it electronically for all reservations for,
And is that accessible through the website?
you would just call and make the request.
Okay.
Anybody can call in and make the request.
Staff will put it on the calendar.
But we as staff will plug in certain meetings throughout the calendar, so we know, like, again, whether it's this meeting, ARC, zoning, that chamber won't be available during that time, court, those kind of things, or community room, from that standpoint. Like coming up, the community room's gonna be blocked off because of the elections, and so we're just plugging all those future dates in right now.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay?
Okay,
But yes, Mr. McCormick will lock that in.
Need a motion to
You
adjourn?
don't need to make a reservation, we'll grab it.
Need a motion to adjourn?
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.